The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
And we are live. Good morning, good afternoon, EMEA, and welcome to this year's first technical webinar for VCSPs. My name is Alexander Lupashko. I'm a cloud system engineer with Veeam. Today, my colleague Ivan Kachimasov, solution architect, is riding shotgun with the Q&A session. And shout out to our colleague Baptiste Tellier, who contributed a lot with the content. So what we're going to talk today is a checklist for upgrading VBR to version 12. This presentation will be filled with a lot of technical details, and you have any questions, please feel free to use Q&A session. We'll try to address as many as we can. If not, we will get back to some of the questions later. As always, this session is recorded, so the session recording will be distributed to you later. Okay, let's jump into it. First of all, let's talk about the release date. As of now, we have GA version that was released a couple of weeks ago, build 1420. It's been 2 weeks in the wild, so to be honest, not a lot of technical issues reported, so pretty stable release. And we had RTM version almost a month ago. And as always, if you need to upgrade from the RTM version to GA, you need a day 0 update, which was in the middle of the February. So feel free to upgrade if you're still running on the RTM version. It's important that you are on the latest build, especially when working with the technical support. For those of you who wanted to stay on V11, that's totally fine. Remember that as per our usual support cycle, it will be supported until the February next year, both in terms of technical support and assistance. However, the patches for critical fixes are only available for the newest release. Now let's talk about dependencies and compatibility and what are the different considerations in that regard. As you know, Veeam Data Platform is a comprehensive solution. Not only it encompasses the backup solutions, but on top of that, we have monitoring and orchestration components. And that in terms of upgrades, it's important that you consider everything. Each piece that connects to the VBR platform is also important in terms of upgrading and considering which versions are supported and which versions are not. Namely, we are talking about our monitoring solutions like Veeam One, Veeam Recovery Orchestrator for disaster recovery orchestration, but also for the multi-cloud environments. If you have connections from public clouds, if you manage public cloud appliances from the VBR, it's important to remember that those are integrated as platform services. They're kind of a little bit independent. And we had a couple of pieces of information available on the next slide regarding what are the considerations for the public cloud updates as well. So first of all, if you have VBR components shared between different installations, such as, for example, your repository is connected to different VBRs, so you have a proxy shared between VBRs, which is, by the way, not supported scenario, but in some cases it does work. Make sure that you upgrade everything simultaneously, otherwise you may bump into components mismatch, and of course it can be resolved, but can be a little bit cumbersome. So you have those shared components, make sure that you're upgrading all at once. For public cloud appliances, again, if you manage VB for Azure, AWS, or Google from the VBR, please wait for the new release. If you want to continue managing them from V12, they're still around the corner. They are not there yet. If you upgrade VBR V12, your existing platform services for those appliances will stop working. So if you have such integration, either stay on V11 and wait, or if you upgrade to V12, they will basically stop working at the moment. As in previous versions, you need to download those integrations separately, and they are kind of upgraded separately from the VBR itself. Other considerations include Nutanix platform. This is specifically for Nutanix Mine. You need to upgrade to version 3.0 before running V12 upgrade. For HV, it's not the case. For Nutanix Acropolis, the we've already got a new version which was released together with the V12. And if you're using Veeam Recovery Orchestrator to do disaster recovery and documentation, please make sure that you have also version 6, because if you keep V0 at the previous version and only upgrade VBR, it basically will stop working with that instance. And V0 is already available as the GA version 6.0. In terms of system requirements, so hardware requirements for VBR didn't change a lot, but we did drop some of the previous versions of platforms. Well, I just wanted to highlight a few of them. For the full list, you can go, of course, at any time to our user guide. We have the full requirements, and we also have this topic that you can just easily find in the backup section on our R&D forums, system requirements for 2022 release. How we approach that is we ran a poll a year ago and asked our customers which platforms they would like to continue support in the VBR V12 moving forward. Some of them we listened to the feedback and we kept them in the product, but some of them were dropped due to, of course, to cut the cost on the QA, etc. So vSphere, namely 5.5, is not supported any longer. You need to have 6.0. If you still on the 5.5 and absolutely must remain on that version, please do not upgrade to V12, because otherwise there is no way you can roll it back unless you back up everything, do configuration back, etc. There will be no patch to support the previous version. The same is applicable for Hyper-V, but I guess it may not be super relevant for those of you who are still running 2000 AR2 SP1. Is not supported any longer. You need 2012. For Nutanix Acropolis Hypervisor, the minimum version is 5.15 now, and for Windows Server, it's the same as for Hyper-V. 2012 is the minimum version as a platform service. Now, what about the platform for the database? As many of you know, we are moving towards a PostgreSQL database. Now it's a supported option in with the VBR V12. So what are the considerations in that regard? First of all, you shouldn't be worried what happens during the upgrade, because the upgrade wizard will keep the existing version in place. So on SQL server, you will remain on the SQL server for the duration of the upgrade and after the upgrade. However, if you're installing the new version of VBR, it will be a Postgre instance by default. You can still switch and use SQL if you want. It's a second option available, but the default one is PostgreSQL. Now, if you are willing to migrate to PostgreSQL and get rid of the SQL maintenance burden, then consider the following. The current QA recommendation is to migrate to Postgre only if you manage below 5,000 instances, which is protected virtual machines on your VBR. And if you're a Cloud Connect provider, the recommendation is always also to stay on the SQL database for now. Those are not hard requirements, it's just a recommendation from our R&D department. The reason is that this is a new platform and we would like to make sure that every performance and some of the uncovered vulnerabilities are fixed before all our larger partners, larger customers can freely use the new platform for the database. So far, we haven't had any significant issues with the PostgreSQL. We're pretty happy about the performance and stability. So again, those are software recommendations, but if you're willing to migrate it to, even if you manage more than 5,000 instances, it's perfectly fine. So what is the actual path to migrate to PostgreSQL? As I mentioned, it's not the part of the upgrade itself. So first you upgrade VBR and Enterprise Manager, and then you can migrate to the Postgre if needed. So for the VBR, it's actually part of the configuration backup and restore. So you follow the normal wizard to back up your configuration after you upgrade, and then you can recover the configuration backup to the Postgre instance. For Enterprise Manager, the process is similar, but the tool that you use to migrate is a command line tool, which is part of the Enterprise Manager suite. You need to locate it in the Enterprise Manager folder, but you have all the details in the EM user guide if you need them. If you had a standalone postgre instance, which was configured by your DBAs or yourself, then you can use the PowerShell commandlet we have specifically for that purpose that will tune up the database limits for the postgre so it's better fit for the Veeam database. Now, regarding the order of upgrade, this is also of significant importance. The idea here is that you need to start with the top management product, which are like a management pane of glass, and then move to the actual VBR product. So if we look at the overall hierarchy of Veeam infrastructure, we start with the top monitoring and controlling products, which are Service Provider Console and Enterprise Manager. They can work perfectly fine with previous version of Veeam, VBR platform. That's why you start with upgrading them first, and then one by one, you move closer to the Veeam Backup Replication. Actually, Cloud Connect and VBR are the last two. The order in which, if you have both on your side, it doesn't matter which one you upgrade first. But what's important to remember is that you first upgrade your monitoring and orchestrating solution, and then move to the core software itself. Now to the backup and replication itself, what you should consider is that don't worry about the license itself. It stays the same. In fact, the wizard will pick up the license from the installation, from the previous installation. You don't need to download the new license. We also have now the checkbox in the installation wizard that allows you to automatically upgrade the components. In the previous version, you do the upgrade and then you launch Veeam console and do the components upgrade. Now you can do this as part of, you don't have to like sit and wait until the upgrade is completed to have the fully functioning installation of the VBR. For those of you who are scheduling maintenance for your backup platform now and then and would like also to upgrade hardware and software, like operating system, we do know partners that follow this path. It will be best not to do this all at once. Maybe start with something, upgrade the hardware or operating system first, and then upgrade the VBR. Do not do everything at once. It just complicates the procedure. It may bump into unexpected issues, and then it will be additional time for recovery. So what we advise is just take piece by piece, upgrade the VBR first, for example, and then think about upgrading the platform later. Specifically, talking about hardware, if you one of those partners who have integration with storage systems, you have plugins integrated in VBR to do storage snapshots, please do check the user guide. Some of those platforms do require upgrades to the new version in order to be fully functioning in V12. Some of the platforms become unsupported. I will have on the next slide a QR code so you can scan it and be redirected directly to that section of the user guide with the full and detailed checklist for different platforms, including storage platforms. Another consideration, which is more like a software-based and Veeam related, is now we have a background retention mechanism in the VBR, which is applied automatically to daily backups, even for disabled jobs. So if you have on your server some of the jobs disabled and you kind of keep the data for some purposes, be mindful that upon upgrading to V12, it will start automatically process those backups according to the retention that had specified in the backup job. This is only applicable for the daily backups that had daily retention, not the number of restore points. And of course, for GFS backups, even if the job is disabled, the background retention is still applicable to that. Now, this is the QR code. Feel free to scan it. It redirects you to our user guide, which has a comprehensive checklist for all supported and platforms for V12, specifically for hardware, specifically for hypervisors and different operating systems. If you have something like that, please do consider checking these requirements and upgrading those platforms correspondingly together with V12 or before V12. Cloud Connect, again, it's the same VBR, so what I've already described for VBR is also applicable to Cloud Connect platform, but regarding the Cloud Connect functionality itself, the business as usual is that your tenants should be on the same or lower version as usual. So if some of your customers are already upgrading to V12 or V6, then your Cloud Connect should be on the same version to be able to monitor those customers and to accept incoming backups. So the other points that I mentioned for VBR are also applicable here regarding the upgrading the components and the upgrading the operating system yet. So I mentioned that postgre, our soft recommendation from R&D team is to stay on the SQL, especially for those of you who also run Service Provider Console as part of your Cloud Connect installation. Remember that Service Provider Console still remains on the SQL for the time being. So if you have a full-blown instance for the Service Provider Console with Cloud Connect, it makes even more sense just to remain on the SQL for now and maybe wait for the Postgre support in the Service Provider Console as well in the next version, hopefully, so that you can migrate all at once. We can change the recommendations regarding Postgre scalability at any time. So we just look at the real-time deployments, look at the support statistics. So you can follow our forums, or at any time you can reach out to your pre-sales consultant and ask if there are any new recommendations on Postgre deployments. The last one that I have for here is specifically for the offsite scenario where you have VB365 on your side and your customers connect via Exchange Explorers through the Cloud Connect tunnel. In order to this functionality work together, after you upgrade to Cloud Connect V12, also please upgrade VB365 to version 7 so that they can work together as an offsite recovery scenario. For Cloud Connect backward compatibility, we did drop some earlier versions of VBR support, so 9.5 is no longer supported. So 10A release is the oldest one you can use for VBR. For agents is version 5, still compatible. Those customers will work perfectly fine going to the Cloud Connect repositories or being monitored by the Service Provider Console. And a bonus slide about Service Provider Console itself is it's also already GA. Feel free to upgrade to it. However, if you want to leverage those two great capabilities, namely full backup management of M365, which includes self-service for customers to manage jobs and organization registration, then you also need to have VBM version 7. Otherwise, this integration will work as it was in version 6, only for licensing purposes. And if you're managing public cloud customers or doing backups in the public cloud area, then we also have this new functionality that allows you to manage public cloud appliances directly from the Service Provider Console plus Cloud Connect. And it does require new versions of those corresponding appliances available. It's not there yet, it's around the corner. Once it's there, of course, there will be announcements all over the place. But this particular integration that allows you to manage those appliances and deploy them remotely also requires new versions for the appliances. Now, the last piece I wanted to share with you is a couple of available documentations. So first of all, we have the upgrade checklist, which has all the recommendations that I've just told you about. And more than that, in the user guide for V12, for Service Provider Console, we have the same in the corresponding user guide. We also updated, we keep updating the corresponding topics on the R&D forums related to the new version. There is frequently asked questions that you can refer to anytime to see how the new functionality is positioned, how to use it, or what are the different scenarios. And for Cloud Connect and VBR, of course, we also keep track of new support issues, known issues, and workarounds for them. So I do encourage, if you don't have access to the service provider forums yet, on the R&D forums, it's easily to get. And I do encourage to check if you have time for that. So the last piece is now doing the upgrade itself. Of course, even if you're completely sure you did all the checklists before you start the upgrade, make sure you have a fresh configuration backup. If you're running Cloud Connect or you have encryption jobs, make sure that your configuration backup is also encrypted so that we can recover credentials from the configuration backup if anything goes wrong. But as a last resort, you can also back up the database and the VBR server itself, either create a snapshot, but make sure to do it for both because database backup is always essential. If anything goes wrong or if the upgrade is interrupted, you can always restore database and restore VBR to previous point, but DB is of the paramount importance. Please do the database snapshot or database backup so that you can roll back if needed. Thank you for your time. Let's take a quick look at the Q&A session. Ivan, do we have anything outstanding?
Yes, we do. We have quite a few questions, actually. Yeah, in case you remember from top of your mind, do we support Veeam Backup for AWS version 5A with the V11 or with V12 release, or you would recommend to stick with V11 until the release of a new version of Veeam Backup for AWS?
That's a good one. I'm pretty sure it should be supported, but in V11 as well. However, it's best to check the user guide. Usually these incompatibilities face only through the major GA upgrades. So pretty sure that the A version should also be supported in V11.
Yeah, I'm also double checking in the backend.
Yeah.
Yeah, what I can tell is that AWS plugin for VBR 11 supports integration with with Veeam Backup for AWS version 5X. So we will double check and get back to you in the follow-up. That's I think the best way to proceed, just in order not to to tell you anything incorrectly. So yeah, there's actually plenty of questions about AWS. Seems to be getting great traction. Yeah, Enterprise Manager on Postgres, while VBR on MS SQL. Is it not supported?
Not supported. Yes, they should be on the same platform.
Yeah, so you cannot keep your VBR running on V11 with MS SQL and while having Enterprise Manager on V12 on Postgres. Anything else? Concerning the background retention. So if I have a backup job with 7 days retention configured and available, and I disable this job, the data will eventually be deleted after the next 7 days.
That's right. Yes.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Daily retention.
Yeah, and if you don't want it to be deleted, then you use the restore points approach. So you have either days or restore points. Yeah. But for VBR upgrade, are older Windows Linux agents supported, including Airman plugin? So basically, if you upgrade your VBR, how does it will work with older version of plugins and other integrations with agents?
It should work fine, yeah, because Armon and agents, they're also part of the platform. They will keep working, and the same is applicable for Nutanix backups. So you just upgrade them separately, yeah. But they're supported.
Yeah, and basically what we'll see is that when you upgrade your VBR to version 12, you will have all of your managed servers asking for upgrade, and it will include those agents which are out of date. Yeah, any solution introduced regarding removal of sensitive data from backup in accordance with GDPR? A bit of off topic, but the question is probably interesting.
Not that I'm aware of, to be honest.
Yeah, I would say that there are a few security, actually many security enhancements in V12, like MFA support, like classified label within the VBR if needed, GMSA accounts and lots of other things. And in terms of GDPR, and the data removal policy. According to GDPR, you also have to store the data for a certain time, and I think it has a higher priority than being able to remove a certain user's data. And for the purpose of not restoring this data back online for the user who has used the right to be forgotten, you have so-called stage restore. You can initiate the restore, enable stage restore, and make sure that this data is not getting restored online when you restore it. But the concept of removal of sensitive data doesn't align well with immutability, for example, because you will not be able to make data immutable if you want to remove certain pieces of data from backups. How do we retain daily backups for disabled or orphan jobs that we need to keep?
I think you answered that. You need to use points rather than days.
Yeah, that's the same question. That's right. Yeah, moving from sober to direct object storage backup. So any recommendations, anything?
That's a good point. If we're talking about migrating from the capacity tier to object storage, I don't think it's feasible, to be honest, because the data structure changed a little bit. For the direct to object backup, we get rid of the local cache. So at the moment, we don't have any migration path from the capacity tier to direct to object. It's best to maybe start a new bucket and keep the previous bucket for audit purposes. But if we're talking about normal backups or normal repositories, such as like a performance extent on your block storage, then you can easily move the data to the object using vMover functionality. We now can move backups around from one repository to another.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, and worth mentioning that you cannot combine object storage extents with regular disk-based extents within the same scale-out repository. You can also you also cannot combine different types of object storage within one server. Can you start Erman jobs from within V12 UI instead of DB admins going to a CLI? So basically, is there a deeper integration between Erman and other plugins and VBR V12?
Yeah, there is a deeper integration now. You can now deploy those enterprise application plugins as part of the protection group. So similar to what we had for Agent for Windows and Linux, you just create a protection group, pick up the applications you want to protect, and then the Erman will be deployed. And the same is applicable for SAP HANA backup as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I mean, questions keep coming actually. So that's great, guys. So nice interaction. So regarding retention policy, let's continue this conversation. Yeah, Kevin, orphaned and imported backups don't have associated backup job with the retention points. How do you retain the backup data? So if I remember correctly, the retention keeps on going with the backup chains, even with those which are not associated with any job anymore. But I'm not, again, I'll have to double check that one. That's a good question. Sasha, if you have anything.
Let's mark it for the follow up. Yeah, I'll just shout to Kevin directly for that. Yeah.
Yeah. Is it possible to move individual restore points from one extent to another in Sober using Veeam Data Mover? That's a great one.
That's a good one. Not on the it's part of the scale out strategy, because in the scale out the backup chain is considered as a whole and just distributed across different extents. You can rebalance the Sober itself. We have this functionality. Not to go into too much detail, but if you have different space available on different extents, if you want to level it out, you can do that with the new Sober functionality.
Yeah. Yeah, and Sober rebalancing will use Veeam Data Mover. So this new technology which allows keeping the savings from ReFS and XFS extents. Can you use Veeam Backup Validator on backups for object storage? I think this one is also for offline, right?
Yeah.
That was a very nuanced questions, guys. That's great. Keep them coming. The follow up with the Q&A will be interesting for that one.
SQL plugin new version. Yes, it is a new functionality, or rather a new type of job we have now. You can use SQL as a standalone plugin in the SQL server. It is not part of the protection group yet, so you need to deploy it semi-manually on the SQL itself. But other than that, yeah, it's now a new functionality that you can do more flexible SQL backups, completely detached from image level backups.
Right. Yeah, how the upgrade for hardened Linux repository will work if you check the box to upgrade all server components? I think it will work automatically, right?
Yeah, we did change the procedure, but from the top of my head, I don't remember all the details. We will deploy a new process, like we call it a supervisor process on the hardened repository, which will be responsible for managing the upgrades. So overall, it becomes simpler to do. But regarding the automated upgrade, I think, yeah, we need to get back to this question. I just don't recall whether you need to use a new set of single-use credentials to do the upgrade.
Yeah. And the last one, the question I see for now is V12 compatible with ACFS file system?
To be honest, I don't know what it is.
checking through the user guide, I don't see any mention of it. So I think we do support if we're talking about virtual machines, we do support any file system which vSphere supports. Mm-hmm. So if vSphere supports this file system and that's a virtual machine, then yes, we can back it up. You can restore this this machine running this file system. If we're talking about agent, then it's unlikely. So it doesn't seem to be supported. And the last one, then we would need to give SSH access back to Veeam to do the upgrade on the Linux immutable food upgrade. As far as I know, DBR is running the service within the.
I don't think that's the case either. You don't need to enable SSH. We should do it through the service connection that we already have.
In case you enable the checkbox, yes. In case it's manual, then you need to re-enable SSH again in order to perform the upgrade. So yeah, we'll possibly share the links later in the follow-up. Okay, so many questions, great questions. Thank you so much for this great discussion, guys. And thank you, Sasha, for your presentation.
Yeah, let's call it a day. We will get back hopefully to some of the questions that we're not able to cover today. Yeah, thank you for your time, and I thought it will be useful for you to have this checklist before running into a new version. As I mentioned, please do check the user guide once again, especially if you have some platforms, outstanding platforms like storage snapshot migration, etc., before you run the upgrade. All right, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Have a good day.